Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everyone. Today we're diving into a topic that's sadly been in the news a lot lately, rising rates of homelessness in America. And we want to focus on how it might be impacting you, specifically our listeners, especially those in the over 50s and retiree demographic.
It's definitely something on a lot of people's minds, and I think it's important to remember that this issue, it doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? It's not just about those experiencing homelessness directly, but the ripple effect it has on communities, on property values, on the strain on social services. These are all things that can impact your peace of mind, even if you're not personally experiencing homelessness.
Exactly, and we have expert speaker with us as always to help break down some pretty startling statistics. So let's jump right in. The latest data from the Department of Housing and Urban Development shows that over 653,000 people experienced homelessness in 2023.
A record high.
Yeah, a record high. And it's not just a big city problem anymore either. We're seeing this trend on the rise in rural areas too.
Which is something to consider, yeah, for those listeners maybe thinking about downsizing to a quieter community in retirement or have family in those areas.
Right, it's hitting closer to home than ever before.
Mm,
And it's interesting, expert speaker, because while the data doesn't specifically break down the homeless population by age group,
right.
a lot of the challenges we're seeing directly correlate to the concerns of older adults. For example, rising housing costs.
Huge factor. Imagine being on a fixed income, maybe relying on a pension or savings, and suddenly those rent increases or property taxes start to feel a lot more daunting. It's tough for anyone in this market, but
It's like that saying, right?
yeah.
It's not about how much money you make, it's about how much money you keep.
Mm,
And for retirees, that sense of financial security is so important.
absolutely. And often healthcare needs increase as we age, which puts even more strain on finances. And we see this reflected in the data, with a lot of folks citing unexpected medical bills as a factor leading to homelessness.
It's a perfect storm, really. And then you add in the emotional toll this issue takes on older adults. This is a generation that really values stability, community, looking out for one another. So to see this level of hardship.
It can be incredibly disheartening. And let's be clear, this isn't just a problem for those experiencing homelessness directly. It impacts everyone. Think about the potential strain on social services, healthcare systems, even local businesses. These are all things that can affect your quality of life regardless of your personal circumstances.
You mentioned how widespread this issue is becoming. Our data shows states like New York, California, Florida having the largest homeless populations overall.
Mm.
But it's not just them. States like Vermont and Oregon have high rates of homelessness despite smaller populations overall.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, it really is. Whether you're thinking about retiring to a bustling city or a quiet coastal town, this is something you're likely to encounter in some form. And expert speaker, I think it's important to remember that behind these statistics, behind these numbers we keep throwing out, are real people. Families, individuals, facing incredibly difficult situations. In 2023 alone, there were 111,620 homeless children recorded.
Wow.
That's 111,620 young lives touched by this crisis. And often alongside older family members who are struggling to provide for them.
That's right. And it really highlights how this issue can impact anyone. We often think of certain groups as being immune to homelessness, but the data paints a different picture. Like the veterans, there has been some progress in recent years addressing veteran homelessness.
And now we're seeing a concerning reversal.
Yeah, in 2023, veteran homelessness actually increased by 7%.
Wow.
A significant step backward, and it raises concerns about the support systems in place for those who have served our country.
It makes you wonder what's driving this resurgence, not just among veterans, but across the board. What are some of the key factors at play here?
Well, economic disparity is a major one. The economy has been recovering since the pandemic, but it's been an uneven recovery, and a lot of vulnerable populations have been hit the hardest.
So even though unemployment is relatively low,
Right.
there are other forces at play, like inflation, that are hitting those on fixed incomes particularly hard.
Exactly. Think about it. If your income stays the same, but the cost of groceries, utilities, healthcare, all that goes up, suddenly you have a lot less wiggle room in your budget to cover those essential expenses.
It's a silent thief, really, chipping away at your financial security.
It is, and it can make it incredibly difficult to stay afloat.
And that ties into the next big factor, right? the housing affordability crisis. This one feels especially relevant to our listeners, many of whom might be on fixed incomes or looking to downsize in retirement.
Absolutely. We've seen skyrocketing housing costs across the board, making homeownership a distant dream for many, and even renting is becoming increasingly difficult. For retirees who might be on a fixed income or perhaps relying on their savings, this can be incredibly stressful.
It's a tough spot to be in.
It is. They're caught between a rock and a hard place. Stay in their homes and potentially struggle to make ends meet, or downsize and face a housing market that's become incredibly competitive and expensive.
And I imagine that for a lot of retirees, their home is their biggest asset. They might be hoping to sell and downsize to help fund their retirement years, but with the current market, that dream is becoming harder and harder to realize.
You've hit the nail on the head. And it's not just about finding a place to live, it's about affordability and quality of life. Can you maintain your independence, your social connections, your access to healthcare if you're forced to move further away from your support system or familiar surroundings? These are all very real concerns that many retirees are facing.
Our sources also point to another contributing factor, the ending of those COVID-era assistance programs. Those were a lifeline for many, but as we know, they weren't designed to be permanent solutions. Can you tell us a bit more about the impact of those programs ending?
Sure. During the peak of the pandemic, we saw a number of government programs designed to help people, stay afloat. Things like stimulus checks, eviction moratoriums, increased unemployment benefits. These provided a much-needed safety net for many, including older adults who might have lost income or faced unexpected expenses. However, as these programs expired, many people found themselves without that crucial support.
So it's like they were thrown back into the deep end without a life preserver, just as the economic currents were becoming even more treacherous.
Precisely. And for those who are already in vulnerable positions, such as older adults on fixed incomes or individuals dealing with health issues, the expiration of this aid often pushed them further to the brink. It's a stark reminder of how important those safety nets are and how their absence can have a ripple effect throughout our communities.
So we have this combination of economic pressures, the housing crisis, and the removal of those crucial safety nets. It's no wonder we're seeing these record numbers of people experiencing homelessness.
It's a complex issue with no easy solutions. But there is some hope. There are initiatives underway to address the root causes of homelessness, and those offer a glimmer of light in what can feel like a very overwhelming situation.
That's what I was hoping we could dig into a bit more. What are some of those initiatives and how are they working to address this crisis, especially for those in the over 50s and retiree demographic? That's what I was hoping we could dig into a bit more. What are some of those initiatives and how are they working to address this crisis, especially for those in the over 50s and retiree demographic?
Well, one of the most significant areas of focus is increasing affordable housing options. We're seeing a push for more government subsidies for low-income housing, as well as incentives for developers to include affordable units in new construction projects. Some communities are also experimenting with, innovative housing models like tiny homes or co-living spaces that can provide safe and affordable options for those on fixed incomes.
That's encouraging. It sounds like those initiatives could directly benefit older adults struggling to afford rising rents or maintain their homes. Are there any programs that target the unique needs of older adults experiencing homelessness or at risk of becoming homeless?
Absolutely. Many communities have organizations dedicated specifically to assisting older adults facing housing insecurity. These organizations often provide a range of services, from financial counseling and housing assistance to healthcare navigation and social support groups. Some even offer temporary housing specifically for seniors, providing a safe and supportive environment while they get back on their feet.
That's good to hear. It sounds like there's a growing recognition of the unique challenges faced by older adults in these situations, and that's a step in the right direction. But beyond these larger initiatives and programs, what can our listeners do to make a difference in their own communities? It can be easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of this issue, but I think it's important to remember that even small actions can have a ripple effect.
I couldn't agree more. One of the most impactful things you can do is support local organizations working to combat homelessness. These organizations often rely on volunteers and donations to provide those essential services to those in need. Even donating a few hours of your time each month or contributing a small amount of money can make a real difference in the lives of people in your community.
And for those who might not be in a position to volunteer or donate, simply raising awareness about this issue is crucial. Talk to your friends, family, neighbors about what you've learned. Share information about local organizations and initiatives on social media. Sometimes just starting the conversation can be a powerful catalyst for change.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of advocating for policy changes. Contact your local representatives, let them know that this is an issue you care about, encourage them to support legislation that addresses the root causes of homelessness, like increasing the minimum wage, expanding access to affordable health care, and investing in mental health services.
So to wrap things up, what would you say is the key takeaway for our listeners today, especially those in that over 50s and retiree demographic who are concerned about this issue and its potential impact on their lives?
I think the most important thing to remember is that you're not alone. Homelessness is a complex issue that affects everyone, directly or indirectly. But there is hope. By understanding the factors at play, supporting organizations working to make a difference, and advocating for change, we can create a future where everyone has a safe and stable place to call home.
It's about turning awareness into action, even if those actions seem small at first. Every effort, no matter how big or small, contributes to the solution. We hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of the challenges and, importantly, the glimmers of hope on the horizon. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.